So I want to say thank you to everybody. My name is Pete McCall. I am the host of the All About Fitness podcast. I'm the author of the book Smarter Workouts, The Science of Exercise Made Simple. And I'm the author of the ebook that I sent you, Dynamic Anatomy. And that ebook is a compilation of articles that I wrote over the years on how muscles function. And that's what I wanted to do. What I want to be able to do with my podcast is I'm going to be doing a series of these webinars. I'm looking at doing maybe one webinar a month on different topics, usually related to other content that you can use. But all the topics have one common theme, and that's how to use exercise to enhance your quality of life. Because really, I know a lot of us get into exercise because we get into it looking at aesthetics and changing our appearance first. But really, as we mature and as we go through life, we have to kind of change our paradigm shift of exercise and really look at it as how to use it to enhance our quality of life. That's what I try to do with the podcast. That's what I try to do with my book. That's what I try to do with everything I write is, yes, there are a lot of people out there that are already telling you how to use exercise purely to change your appearance. Great, fine. That's important. But really what I want to be able to do is to help you understand how to use exercise to really just change everything, quality of your life, change how you age. I'm right now working on my second book. My second book is called Ageless Intensity. It's how high intensity exercise can slow down the aging process. And that's probably gonna be the next webinar I do, is really on how to use exercise. It's exercise and aging. That's one of my big areas of focus, especially over the last number of years. I turned 48 this year, and really, I try to use exercise to be able to do all the things I want to do. Like I'm gonna go mountain biking. If out my window right now, I can see a nice big mountain off in the distance, and I got a little bit less than a mile to go to get to the mountain biking trails. And that's really how I look at exercise. I look at exercise as the vehicle to allow you to enjoy your favorite activities. And that's what I want to go through today with this webinar, is really how your body functions during exercise. You have the ebook. I shared the ebook with you. I was going through it a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go through it a little bit at the end to show you where some of the resources are. And what I want to do today is I'm going to go back and forth between the video screen and between the presentation screen. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is a presentation screen, hitting the presenter mode. And so I'm gonna break it out at one or 2 points, a couple points in the presentation, and really so that way I want you to get up and move. The reason why I started this, why I have this picture up here, and this is actually a picture that I got from Anatomy Trains by Thomas Myers, the book. This is a 16th century anatomist. Vesalius is his name, Vesalius. He was Italian. This was the age of enlightenment. And you have to understand that when we first started studying the human body, this was that period of time during the Renaissance where we started trying to have a very scientific understanding of the world. So the early anatomists, when they started doing cadaver dissections, what they did was they went in, they studied one section of the body at the time. They broke the body up into individual parts. But what we've learned in maybe the last 30 years where anatomy has really shifted its focus is we're no longer looking at the body as individual parts, and we're looking at the body as a collective whole. And that's really what this webinar is about. This webinar is about understanding how everything in our body functions as one system. If you really want to if you want something to meditate on a little bit later, every single one of us started as a single cell organism. When that sperm hit the egg and the sperm fertilized the egg, it was just one cell. And then it became 2 cells, and then 4 cells, and then 8, and so on. So if we really look at it, at the genesis of who we are as a structure, as a being, is a single cellular organism. And yet when we go into the gym, we try to isolate body parts. We try to do this body part. We try to do this body part as individual components. But that's not the way the body actually functions. And that's the whole point of this talk, is to get you thinking differently. This talk is really a paradigm shift to thinking differently about exercise. I tried to do that in the podcast. I tried to do that with different talks I give, different articles and different things I write. Now, if you're a fitness professional, to let you in a little bit, the reason why I made this available for only $23 is I did not apply for CECs, for continuing education credits. If you're a fitness professional, what you can do is you can take, that's why I put these notes in there. You take these learning objectives, you take a copy of the slides, the PDF copy of the slides I sent you, and you'll be able to apply to your organization, whether it's ACE, NASM, or ALPHA, and you'll be able to apply. You can apply for CECs for that. This should be worth about 2 CECs. But in order for me to go through the CEC approval process, it's a couple $100 for each course, and I wanted to bring the price down. If I had gone through the CEC approval process I would have had to charge about $50 for the course in order to make even the course viable. So I wanted to make the course more, I wanted to put the course out there, especially for listeners of the podcast. But if you're a fitness professional and you want to use this for CECs, you do have you can audit, or you can audit the CEC process. There's like a $25 fee with most organizations. You have to show the session description, which you have the session description, you have the learning objectives here, and then that's how you would submit that along with the notes and get the CEC approval for that. But let's look at learning objectives. One of the most important things I want you to think about today is the first learning objective. Why it's important to know how muscles function during the gait cycle. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The second one down is explain the difference between contractile and elastic tissues in the muscles, because every muscle has different tissues in it. Some tissues are designed to generate force, and other tissues are designed to mitigate or spread force, transfer force between the different limbs. And that's one of the big takeaways from this webinar today. Number 3 is how do muscles function to store and release mechanical energy? We all understand that when we eat food, we have nutrients. Fat and carbohydrate are our primary energy nutrients. Fat produces about 9 calories of energy per gram. Carbohydrates produce about 4 calories of energy per gram. That's chemical energy in the body. Our body will metabolize, the digestive system metabolizes fats and carbohydrates into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, to fuel muscular activity. That's chemical energy. But your muscles store and release mechanical energy as well. And it's really having an understanding of how those two energy systems interact. So we have mechanical energy from the structures, and that's really what we're going to talk about today. And the chemical energy from the food you eat is a whole different topic. So I'm just going to leave it there. Finally, what I want you to be able to understand is how to do workouts based on patterns, movement patterns, because the brain is hardwired for movement patterns. That's going to take us right into the next slide. So when we look at it, and for those of you that are parents out there, I always like asking this question in workshops. How old was your baby when your baby started doing chest flies? How old was your baby when your baby started doing biceps curls or started doing crunches? Right? Babies don't do that. Babies don't work in isolation. The pictures on the left side of your screen are typical, gym pictures, right? We're focused on isolation. The pictures on the right side of the screen, though, are babies at an early age. And here's the thing, we can't teach, how many times were you able to coach a baby how to move? You weren't. Babies know how to move innately. The human being, the human structure knows how to move innately. So we have to think about it. Which comes first, muscle isolation or movement? And really, we know that movement patterns comes first. And again, this is a paradigm shift. I really want you to think about this going forward, whether you're a fitness professional, whether you're a consumer, if you're a fitness enthusiast, but exercise is movement, and movement is a skill. So when we look at it, when we go to the gym, I'm just going to angle the camera down here. When we go to the gym a lot, we're sitting there trying to isolate different parts in the body. Are we really developing movement as a skill? Or are we just loading force into the tissues? So we have to think about that. We really should look at exercise as an opportunity to enhance our skill, enhance our ability to move. So if you one of the things I love talking about, I live in San Diego, and you go to the beach, you go to the beaches when you can go to the beach. Right now, we can walk on the beach. We can't hang out on the beach. I'm recording this in the spring of 2020 for future generations. But what's funny is you can always tell bodybuilders on the beach. And what do I mean by that? If you see a bodybuilder, they might look beautiful, but then watch them try to throw a football. Watch them try to throw a Frisbee. Watch them try to run around. Bodybuilders don't move that well because they do isolation training. They're breaking down the body into individual parts. But really, we have to think of everything as one whole movement system. And this is why. This is how we learn how to move. If you look at on the screen right here, what's the first movement that a baby understands or a baby learns how to do? And again, a baby knows this innately. We don't coach a baby. You don't sit over a 4-week-old and say, okay, do your tummy time, do your press ups. You don't take an 8-week-old and teach your 8-week-old how to roll over. We know this innately in our brain. But these are the movement patterns that the body understands and learns how to do. The important thing is look at crawling. A baby is anywhere between maybe 5 and 8 months when they start crawling. And what's crawling? Crawling is arm and leg action. Crawling is arm and leg action working together. When you crawl, this shoulder is working with the opposite hip. What happens when you walk? This shoulder works with the opposite hip. All the muscles in our body are aligned to make walking as efficient as possible. And think about this. When you watch an animal, if you watch a four-legged animal being born, how long does it take that animal to learn how to walk? Whether it's a dog, whether it's a horse, whether it's a cow, a deer. Four-legged animals can walk almost immediately. Four-legged animals have 4 points of contact with the ground. Their spine is parallel to the force of gravity. So four-legged animals have a different force dissipation of gravity. How long does it take a human baby to learn how to walk? That's my older daughter there, pictures of her during her development. It takes a human baby anywhere from 11 to 14 months to learn how to walk. And think about this. The first year of our life is nothing more than a core training program to get us to learn how to stabilize against gravity. I'll say that again. The first year of our life, all we're doing is a strength and conditioning program to be able to stand upright on our feet to handle the forces of gravity. Because humans only have 2 points of contact with the ground. And when we walk, we have to mitigate, we have to handle the force of gravity. Gravity accelerates us into the ground. So the first 10, 12 months of our life, we're doing tummy time, we're rolling over, we're crawling, we're cruising. Cruising's holding on to like the crib. My daughter's holding on to the crib there. We're developing the strength in our body to be able to move upright against the force of gravity. Then we have two competing forces. We have the top-down force of gravity, and we have a bottom-up force of ground reaction. And those two forces really drive how the body moves. If you look at the patterns of movement, these are the basic foundational or fundamental patterns of movement. Those are basically, those synonyms are there. So we have the squat or the hinge movement. Squatting and hinge is a bilateral action, both legs working together. The hips and legs work together. Lunging is a single leg action. Lunging could also be step-ups, could be split leg squats, could be single leg squats, whatever you want to call it. But we have bilateral movement of squatting and hinging. We have single leg action of lunging or step-up, single leg action. Pulling can be from in front of the body, or pulling can be from an overhead position. Same with pushing. Pushing, we can push out in front of the body like a push-up, or pushing, we can push in an overhead position like a dumbbell lift, an overhead lift. And rotation, and really think about this, rotation is half pull, half push. So if you're doing a full rotation, at some point you transition from pulling to pushing. These are the basic patterns of movement. This is where, again, there's that paradigm shift. In the gym, we should be thinking about pattern training. We can have a push day with a lower body hinge day. We can have a pull day with a lower body lunge day or lower body single leg day. So it doesn't mean a huge paradigm shift if you're used to doing chest and back. It just gets into that pattern of push-pull. Because when we do patterns, we're using multiple muscle groups at one time. We're using multiple tissues at one time. And we're just working with the more natural neural physiology of how our brain works. Now, the next slide, real quick before I get into it, this is where one of those times where I'm going to get up and I'm going to demonstrate this. So I'm going to come up, bring the camera up right here so you can see me a little bit more in full body. Now, this is the one time when all these actions come into play. And remember that first point that I want you to learn today was how do muscles in our body work during gait? Because think about this. When we're walking through gait, and I'm giving you a side view here, this leg is forward. This leg is swinging forward during gait. In gait, there's a specific moment when this leg is on the ground and this leg is on the ground. My front leg and my back leg are on the ground. And we're doing a little bit of a split squat. We're doing a little bit of a hinge pattern. And then what happens, we transition to a single leg. So gait, we go from doing a split squat, we go from doing a hinge, a split squat, to doing a lunge. We squat and we lunge when we gait, when we walk. When we do gait, when we walk, when those arms are moving, when this arm is swinging forward, that's a push pattern. When this arm is swinging back, that's a pull pattern. And then what happens, as our arms and our legs rotate, we create, as this arm swings forward, we create thoracic rotation. As this leg swings forward, we create pelvic rotation. When we look at those fundamental patterns of movement, they're broken down inherent in the gait cycle. So if you haven't stood up, let me have you stand up real quick and join me wherever you are. If you're at a desk, well, you're not in a coffee shop, at least in the States. Most coffee shops are closed right now. But think about practicing this. So stand in that split stance. Take your right leg forward, take your left leg back. Take that left arm swinging forward, take that right arm swinging back. So when we walk, we create that cyclic action of our shoulders and our hips counter-rotating. If you look at top-down, if you did a top-down view of walking, we're looking down top-down, these are your shoulders, these are your hips. Our hips and our shoulders counter-rotate. And we look at core training to take it a step further. When we look at core training, any muscle that connects the shoulders to the hips can be considered a core muscle. So if we really want efficient exercises for a core, we have to integrate the shoulders and the hips together. That's a whole nother webinar down the line. Now, well, we'll do that some other time about different core training strategies. But really, when we look at it, that's how we need to think about every muscle in our body is designed to be most efficient when we're walking on the ground. That's it. Every muscle in our body is designed to be most efficient. Think about the biceps muscle, right? So the biceps, normally we flex the bicep, we flex the elbow to strengthen the biceps. But when do the biceps work during gait? The biceps work during gait as the arm swings back and the elbow goes into extension. That biceps is loaded with elastic energy to swing that arm forward into the next phase of gait. Think about that, right? So the biceps goes from storing mechanical energy here, extension, and then it transitions to releasing that energy to cycle the arm through. The same thing with other muscles in our legs. So when we think about it, that's how everything in our body is designed to work. All the muscles in our body are optimally aligned to work most efficiently and effectively when we're standing on our feet, walking through the pattern of gait. And that's where I really, again, that's just that big paradigm shift that I want us thinking about going forward. And we can see that here. If we look in this image on the screen, we can see how the human legs go through that cycle. And if you understand what muscles do during gait, then you really have a much better idea about how to design exercise programs.